everybody. As you can see, it's kind of dark right now, so it is either very early or it's very late at the time of recording.
Who knows?
So we'll let you guess that.
It's like Wayne's World.
And as soon as Megan's done.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, we'll continue. And chapter 30 in Genesis is where we're at, so let's dive right in. There's another wild one.
Let's do it.
I'll be reading from the column on the right, the JPS Tanakh translation. The column on the left is the NRSV translation. You are invited to follow along on either side in your Bibles at home or just listen as we read. When Rachel saw that she had borne Jacob no children, she became envious of her sister. And Rachel said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I shall die." Jacob was incensed at Rachel and said, "Can I take the place of God, who has denied you the fruit of the womb?" She said, "Here's my maid Bilhah. Consort with her that she may bear on my knees, and that through her I may too have children." So she gave him her maid Bilhah as concubine, and Jacob cohabited with her. Bilhah received and bore Jacob a son, and Rachel said, "God has vindicated me. Indeed, he has heeded my plea and given me a son." Therefore she named him Dan. Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. And Jacob said, "A fateful contest I waged with my sister, yes, and I have prevailed." So she named him Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took her maid Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as concubine. And when Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son, Leah said, "What luck!" So she named him Gad. When Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, Leah declared, "What fortune!" meaning, "Women will deem me fortunate." So she named him Asher. Once, at the time of the wheat harvest, Reuben came upon some mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Was it not enough for you to take away my husband, that you would also take my son's mandrakes?" Rachel replied, "I promise he shall lie with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came home from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You are to sleep with me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." And he lay with her that night. God heeded Leah, and she conceived and bore him a fifth son. And Leah said, "God has given me my reward for having given my maid to my husband." So she named him Issachar. When Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son, Leah said, "God has given me a choice gift. This time my husband will exalt me, for I've borne him 6 sons." So she named him Zebulun. Last she bore him a daughter and named her Dinah. Now God remembered Rachel. God heeded her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, "God has taken away my disgrace." She named him Joseph, which is to say, "May the Lord add another son for me." The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of the Lord lives forever. This is the word of the Lord. All thanks be to God. So how do you feel about that?
I got the vapors. We got babies popping out everywhere. What is going on?
Babies popping out everywhere.
Popping.
No, it's getting crazy. Oh, these poor women and their competition.
Oh my goodness. They're like, oh, throw your concubine here, throw your concubine here. We'll go and have. Jacob's having a great time.
Right?
Jacob's living it up.
It
right
never
now.
says that he is like upset about all these arrangements.
Not at all.
Not one time.
Not at all.
Doesn't complain.
I was like, oh, concubine, another baby. What? Let's talk. I was saying that we got babies popping everywhere. We have Jacob that is clearly not complaining
Not at all.
about the situations and the additional concubines that are being thrown and tossed his direction for him to have more babies. And it's not like Leah already gave him children, multiple children. Was it 4?
Before going into this chapter. Yeah.
And then it was like, here's a concubine for you. Because Leah is like a trump card, right? It's like going ahead and giving you, I'll give you this concubine, says Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Leah's like, let me go ahead and trump that with this concubine. And we'll have some more kids. And Jacob's like, party and babies. So, I mean, it definitely showed some competitive natures in this story, and you know,
yeah, it's like game on, right? As soon as
beyond
Leah had those
game
4
on.
children, game on.
Yeah, Rachel's like, meh, I gotcha.
Yeah, so she does the same thing Sarah does, and
then
try
Leah
to
was
have
like, I'm not
kids
going through
with
that again.
concubines.
Here's the concubine.
Leah does the same thing, gives concubines, have more children.
Yeah. So where is it with these women now? Within this whole story, is their self-acceptance and love for themselves and value within themselves that they see, because you know it's like this competitive nature to have these children in order to please Jacob, but the love, clearly, I mean, he says he loves Rachel. Leah provides him with these children, but yet they keep giving him more children. It doesn't like grow the love. It says nothing about like Jacob saying, "Oh, I love Leah," or "I love Rachel even more because they're giving me these concubines and these additional children." It's like they just keep trying to one up each other.
Mm-hmm.
So is that like a reflection? I guess. What is God really trying to share in this message? Is it a reflection upon themselves? On their own personal value that they have, that they're relying on Jacob for his acceptance and love for them rather than their love for themselves? That's
Honestly,
what I question.
Yeah, I think you're really onto something, and I agree with you. Jacob never seems to be swayed. His love for one or the other doesn't seem to be impacted by how many children they have, although they think it is.
It's important to
he gives
them,
no
but it's not
indication
important. It
that
doesn't
is,
seem
yeah.
like it's important to him. Like, it's not like, hooray, I need 12 kids. Yay. Why? That's all I gotta say, why?
That's right, and this whole 12 tribes of Israel is coming as a result of this competition between Leah and Rachel.
And is that what God really wanted to happen? I mean, I don't know, because, you know, the 12 tribes is kind of something that made, you know, what we know as religion today and beliefs of today. But was that truly the ultimate motive for God to create this competition for these additional children to be born? Not saying they're any less than what Leah had provided.
That's a good question.
And then
yeah.
hold on, wait, Rachel ends up having a child. Should have been patient so that she learned prior to just divvying up her concubines.
So she ended up doing the exact same thing Sarah did in the impatience and waiting.
Ismael.
You know, I guess from the Abraham story, we should have had an idea that Sarah was going to eventually have children, you know, because of the promise and so forth. But with Jacob, he's got Leah also, and it doesn't seem like as much of a guarantee that Rachel was ever going to have children. So I guess that's a little different.
This is where patient becomes a virtue? Is this where the start of that patience?
And not just patient, but like you're saying, that acceptance of herself, of whether or not she was ever going to bear children. Too.
As a woman, you know, do you have enough value, acceptance, and honor in yourself to be patient enough to wait for God to give you that gift? But I would also challenge that, because here's the other part of it. In today's society, there are many loving, wonderful parents that adopt children, that accept them as their own. So it's not about the children being,
Hmm.
whether they were born of or born into. Um, it's just.
Well, in essence, that's kind of what the children by the concubines were. I mean, because they give birth, and then the wife gets to claim that child for her own. So, I mean, it's kind of like
Adoption.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point.
I do find that interesting
Hmm.
because it's just a different way of looking at things. But and yes, at this point in the story, there's no indication that he saw these children a little bit differently than his own, because they were his.
Yeah,
It
there
didn't
is.
matter if they were with Leah or Rachel. They
Oh,
were still his children.
and after this, I mean, we totally, I don't know about you all, but I totally lose sight of who gave birth to which children, except, of course, by how Joseph is emphasized here, and then Joseph becomes a main character, then how Benjamin is emphasized and things. Like, because of how much emphasis they get, like, it's easier to remember that they come from Rachel, but as far as who comes from Leah, who comes from Zilpah, who comes from Bilhah, I totally lose sight of that without reading the story.
Which to me, that's how it should be, because if you were in today's society an adopted child, which I'm an adopted child, I see my family as my family. I don't see it as anything else than
Hmm.
that. I do question, though, the patience of Rachel in the
Hmm.
competition for what they were trying to get to. And was that really, it doesn't really say much about what God had proclaimed to be the direction in which Jacob went with his descendants.
Yeah, and that's true too, because God promised many descendants, stars, the sky,
Stars
sand
in
of
the
the
sky.
earth, and dust, whatever, and but never said there would be 12 descendants. Never,
No.
was never specific about that. This
And
is
then
just
number
kind of the way
12
it
is very
played out.
important.
Hmm.
Numbers are very important.
And this is the beginning, actually. Good call. This is the beginning of 12 being very important, because this is the original
12,
important
yeah.
12 number. Yeah, the 12 tribes.
Yep.
Which we're not all the way there yet. We've only reached 11 at this point.
Spoiler
We've got
alert!
another one to go. But yeah, like you said, I mean that self-acceptance, how the story seems to be a reflection more about the women's understanding of
And
themselves and
value.
valuing
Yes.
themselves. Yeah, and to recognize that of that value that we've already got, and we don't have to earn that through having children or whatever it is.
Yeah, and seeing that value in a man's love. Why why is it at that point in time was it so valuable to those women to have these children in order to have the love of somebody that they cared so deeply about? Because clearly he could care less of who these children came from. So
Hmm.
why is it? And I'm not saying necessarily that they're devaluing themselves, but it seemed like the value came in the competition of who can have and provide the most descendants for Jacob.
Yeah.
And to me, that as a woman, that's heartbreaking. It's sad because they were trying to see themselves as this. I don't even know what they were trying to see at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, worthy of being his wife, or a true woman, or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
There are many women in today's society that take upon children, whether it be a foster child, whether it be even in temporary time, or long term adoption, that take on children as their own.
So that's an interesting point. So this value and thing. I mean, Rachel, kind of how you're describing it, it's like she's just demonstrating already her value and how special she is by taking those children on as her own.
Yeah. And they're not even, hers.
Hmm.
And again, I will point out that Jacob was not
Although,
complaining the whole entire time.
and it is kind of a complicated issue, because it's not like Zilpah and Bilhah were choosing to allow their kids to be adopted by Leah and Rachel or
Well,
whatever it is. So it's a little different situation, but even still, to claim those kids, to give them a home, to give them the love, and to give them a rightful place in this world.
and
That's
to
a very
allow
special
your
thing.
husband or the man that you're madly in love with to lay down with somebody else and create a being that will continue on for many, many years.
And the humility it takes to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And
To me, that's heartbreaking. But this is today's society that I live in, right?
yeah.
So
Different world.
it's very different. I couldn't imagine being a woman at that point in time and thinking that the most important thing to do is to give the person that you love the very most a descendant and not being able to give it. But I will tell you, Leah didn't play fair in this situation because she already gave him 4. And then she was like,
she
I'll
kept
go
piling
ahead.
them on.
Here's my concubine because I'm not popping out anymore.
Oh yeah, and then the mandrakes. By the way, mandrakes are seen as a fruit of fertility, a fruit of like an aphrodisiac kind of thing. And so this is why Rachel wanted the mandrakes and why they made that deal and everything. So Rachel basically made a deal for the mandrakes.
She tried to make a deal. I didn't see that deal being solidified in this situation.
Well, it worked out for of course, for Leah and for Jacob. They had a couple more kids out of it.
Just a few.
But then for Rachel, she did end up having Joseph at the end.
Which is amazing, right?
Which seems to have something to do with these men.
Rachel. Why didn't you just wait until you had Joseph? But no, she came in like a fire. She's a little firecracker. She was like, yeah, I know, I'm barren. Here's a concubine. Boom. Give me some children.
Yeah, and she was working behind the scenes too. Like as soon as she saw the mandrakes, like, oh, I gotta get the mandrakes. And then she ended up having a child after having the mandrakes. So
what is this guy? What is God telling us in this story?
Little fruit. Well, honestly, it's hard to say. All we can do is speculate a little bit. But I think you're right on the money. I think perhaps maybe our biggest learning from this might be about Leah and Rachel and their desire to be valued, to be loved, and not realizing
what they see their
the
value
whole time.
in.
Not realizing that they were valued and were loved in their own different ways and had their roles. And it was a weird situation. It's hard for us to relate to, but they were both already. They were both good to go as they were.
They were both established.
But nevertheless, they weren't ready to give up on it.
That competitive nature in women still exists today.
I wonder if it exists in any men out there too.
I didn't see anything existing with Jacob. I think he was quite alright with the arrangement.
He was happy. He
didn't
worry about it. But yeah, so maybe it's just a matter of recognizing our value as we are instead of endlessly competing for something that
and knowing that we're
really
good enough,
in the end.
just as we are, just as God made us, we are good enough.
Amen. God takes us as we are and works with us from there. We don't need to get anything else to prove ourselves, to earn anything. Again, that's where grace comes in. We can't earn that.
Who's Grace? No,
and on that note,
is she another concubine? No, just kidding.
So picture for today. This is a different kind of picture. It really doesn't have specifically, as much to do with the story as some of the other ones. But at any rate, what in the world is this? This is a two-part question. This is both the question of what is this and where is it at? So, two-part question for you. Anybody out there?
Are you
with
making
a
the
good
questions
answer?
more difficult?
We are, because you all are too good at this game.
Linda!
All right. So, what is this? Where is it at in that picture? And thank you all. We're looking forward to hearing some answers. Thank you all for being with us on this either dark early morning or dark late night, whatever it might be. Thank you all so much. We love
According
you.
to the story.
Not even sure what she meant by that one. So let's all ponder it and talk about it in the live chat. And thank you. We'll see you soon. God bless you all.
Have a nice day.